Welcome to Wine Plus AI. We're your hosts and wine lovers, Adrian and Zaina. This is the podcast where we break it all down for real people, not the people who are working in the terminal.
Just the truth about AI. What's brilliant, what's broken, and what's straight up ridiculous.
Let's get into it. Okay, so we're here today to talk about probably one of the, I would say this is kind of lingering at the back of my mind often, and I think I'm not alone, but is AI going to take my job? I feel like every podcast that I've heard in the background of my kitchen that my husband's listening to all talk about job creation or job loss as a result of AI. I want to dive into that. And today we have a wonderful Chablis with us. So we pair the conversation with a glass of wine, which honestly I think is like possibly a little unhinged, especially because I asked Nora, a product Zaina here is developing, what the wine should actually be to pair with this conversation. And she suggested Chablis, which is crisp, refreshing, a little zippy, keeps the mood lifted. I guess we're going to talk about some pretty dark shit here. Classic, reliable choice when you have no reliability.
Needs to come from somewhere.
And encourages an honest and clear thinking discussion. TBD on that one. But we will try to aim for some clarity, and we do want to be honest about how we feel about this. So yeah, Zaina, any comments on the wine here? Otherwise, we can do a little cheers.
Yeah, I think a great choice. So let's get started.
Yeah, thank you, Nora. All right. So as I said, this is a topic that has come up in conversation quite a lot over the last, I want to say even year plus. It's kind of been on the back of everyone's mind. I pulled some stats. These are kind of old stats, and I think these stats are constantly coming up. But the World Economic Forum mentioned that AI will be creating 69 million new jobs by 2027, while displacing 83 million. So that's a net job loss of 14 million jobs. So number one, we don't know what those new jobs will be. And we have a net job loss. So yeah, what do we think about that?
Yeah, I think those numbers are in itself quite scary when you think about it. And when you look at them outside of the context of, AI basically, or the detail of it. I think there is quite a lot of nuance to it when it comes to job loss and job creation with AI. Like in itself, AI doesn't really have the ability to take everyone's job just for the sake of it. AI is really good when it comes to really repetitive things that don't necessarily have any sort of reasoning behind it. But AI still is really very far behind on anything in regards to critical thoughts or reasoning or thinking, because everything is input based. So someone has to tell it what to do and how to do it. And so there is a very, very big difference between AI itself taking the job versus some jobs being maybe automated due to the simplicity per se of the process, but it also gives someone more opportunities, right? So if you are able to, for example, automate parts of your work, that means you can focus more on the creative aspect of your work that actually allows you to also grow. Because I would say for most people, the very straightforward processes are not the thing that really bring them joy in their day to day.
Yeah, I mean, you say that, but I do think that there are some people out there who really enjoy, checking their inbox first thing in the morning and sorting it out themselves. That can 100% be automated in this day and age. We know things that can do that. But I do feel, not everybody's job is creative.
That is definitely true. And I also do think that the jobs for people who do really enjoy the repetitive aspect, they will always still be there. If you look at the adoption of AI across companies, may that be in big corporations, but even in small companies, it hugely differs, right? There are companies who are, I would say, quite in the forefront with that, and that are putting an active effort into making sure AI is part of the day-to-day. So, for example, Shopify would be, I think, quite a well-known example currently. But there are so many companies that are also really against bringing AI more into the day-to-day of people, may that be from a data security perspective or privacy perspective, because knowledge is at the end power for a lot of companies.
So I think as we've been doing user research for a new product, we've been speaking to a lot of knowledge workers specifically about their concerns around AI, why they might not use it as much as they should. And I think one of the biggest concerns in this space, kind of attached to this, will AI take my job, is actually using AI in their day-to-day. So a lot of people are concerned with if they use AI more on a daily basis, and let's just say their boss finds out, their boss could then think, yeah, maybe I shouldn't hire Joe, or maybe I shouldn't be working with Joe anymore because AI can do Joe's job. You've obviously heard that. So what have you heard?
Yeah, I think it's a valid fear to have, depending on how you utilize AI in
Ooh, valid.
Yeah. I think it depends on how you utilize AI in your work and what your work is. But overall, I think AI has a really great potential to be an enabler for you to do your job more effectively and faster. So if we look at the things that you and I also do now day to day, may that be scheduling meetings, following up an email, following up on someone's to-dos, for example, they're all things that also create overhead for us. They're not where most of our brain power needs to go or should be going, also from the value that we bring to the company. So AI can definitely be used as an enabler to make your work more productive, but I still think there is quite a big gap to it actually being able to replace you in your work as a whole.
I also think that, and I think we'll also get into this as part of the job loss conversation, but I do think that there's a certain element that you still need an operator in the mix. And I hear the term operator being thrown around, and if you've not heard about that, it's literally the human that is using the AI. And I think you still need an operator involved in so many tasks that is specialized on that specific task. And I'll give you an example. I have been playing around with Midjourney because I want to be able to make cool videos. I want to see what it can do. I'm experimenting just to see, yeah, can I become a designer with Midjourney? The short story is probably not. I can do something to an okay level, but because I, as the operator, am not a designer, I would say I have a good idea of what looks good and what doesn't, but I don't know how to nitpick. I don't know how to manage the AI and prompt it in such a way that there's no way that I could do that job. And I don't think if we're expecting employees and workers to do something that's necessarily outside of their wheelhouse of skills, if AI is really going to help them that much to get them to a level that's acceptable for the business. I mean, it depends on your business, right?
I think what you mentioned is, yeah, a perfect example with Midjourney of how AI can be really, really effective if you know what you're doing and if you know what to say. Because at the end, it is input based. So it does rely on you telling it what to do still. And that also means you need to know what you're asking for to get the results that you really want at the end.
So then I want to talk about the rise of the generalist. So we see it more and more that companies who have let people go, it's put a lot more work onto the people who are there. So for my generation, we were really pushed to, especially in marketing, maybe this is not true of all competencies, but I had the vision, and it was shared among my peers, basically, that you should specialize. So I specialized in content brand. That's also where it naturally took me. And I think because you had these tech companies specifically that were building teams that became bigger and bigger and bigger and more specialized, that made sense. Now we're kind of getting smaller and smaller and smaller, leaner and leaner. And so you need not people who are ultra specialists, but people who can do a little bit of everything. So for marketing, that's the T-shaped marketer. That's also changed over the last few years as well with AI skills. It's become even broader and even wider. The top of the T is a lot wider. And I feel this rebellion against this idea of going back to being a generalist. And honestly, it's humbling because I realize, yeah, my lack of skill in design, for example. And I wish I was maybe more of a generalist and I have to revisit so many skills. But for you as a Gen Zer, do you have that pain? Were you ever pushed to become more of a specialist?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. But I think given that most of my background has been in startups, I've kind of always had a bit of a multi-operator role. And I think product is oftentimes also somewhat a cross-functional role in many ways. So I can't necessarily relate to it from a personal level, but I can definitely relate to it from a trends perspective. I think the generalist approach in itself has a lot of positives when it comes to execution speed, because obviously if you're able to get something from A to B or from A to Z actually by yourself, that allows you to also maybe test something faster or ship something faster, may that be marketing, may that be in product. But I would say there is a big difference still when it comes to specialized production of may that be content or may that be product delivery, whatever that could be. But there is still quite a big difference when it comes to specialized creation of, let's say, for example, content and generalized creation. So like you said as well before with the example of Midjourney, you can give it inputs and you can get the output that you need to move forward, but you won't necessarily get the output that you need to really achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve. And I think there is a bit of that opportunity also for people to really lean into developing more skills per se, because if you're able to reduce some of your load from your work and your repetitive layer, you may have the time, more of the time to actually also broaden your skill set and to go deeper. But I do think there is a ceiling for that as well.
Number one, I love how you called yourself a multi-operator.
Yeah.
That to me is already way more AI native than I think I am, which is really funny. But number two, I 100% agree, because I think as somebody working in a busy tech job, it's always been the case where you're like, oh yeah, I would love to learn this tool, for example, but then you have to, earmark time. You have to say like, okay, I'm going to do this in my lunch break, or I'm going to do this after work. And that, you just know, personally, that rarely works out. And it's not because I'm not motivated. It's just that I like to have a life. And yeah.
Can fully understand. And I do think also that companies that want people to be more of a generalist or that want people to also make use of AI more really have a responsibility to also enable all of their employees to do so. And that's both from a tooling perspective as well as from a time perspective. It's not something you learn overnight to really work with it and to make it work for you. It takes time. It takes trying out different tools. It takes kind of weeding through the hype of what is out there that you could possibly use to help you or enable you to move faster, and learning how to work with it, and then it brings value. So that time really is necessary.
And like speaking of this kind of time component to learn how to use AI and hoping that your employer will not just encourage that, but actually facilitate that. That's one thing. But then to be handed some of these tools that are node builders, they're logic flows. And if you don't think that way, I'm like very much a creative person. I think in shapes and colors. And I just feel like some of these more logic things, just if I imagine my workflow, I would prefer to describe it. I would prefer to chat about it rather than kind of create a flowchart. I mean, I can do a flowchart, but it's not how I naturally think. So I think a lot of these tools that are handed over are very much, again, just built for people who are a bit more technical. Yes, not the ultra developer, but indeed, they think this way because the people who built them are thinking this way as well. And I think that that's such a missed opportunity, because you're missing so many people and you're actually excluding them from this AI forward way that we're kind of going in the modern workplace.
I think the accessibility of AI is a huge, huge topic, and one that is really also underestimated by a lot of people. If I look at, I think we had a conversation about this recently where you were trying out a tool to build a marketing flow. And I think one of the first things you were asked is your familiarity with API keys.
I mean, yes, I can find one, but not my forte.
Exactly. And it's not your way of thinking either. Like, you don't think in API keys. I work close, obviously, to the tech team, and I don't think in API keys either. So I think that gap of accessibility is a huge one, a huge market to tap into, yes.
Yeah. So I think another topic that comes up kind of in this realm. Am I going to lose my job to AI? How much am I using it? Is your employer actually encouraging you to use it and facilitating that? I think one of the biggest things I have heard with the people that I've talked to who are also working for tech companies, also exploring AI, trying to figure out like how they can use it more in their job, because I think that is key. I think we both agree on that. Like if you're not using AI in your current job, you are more likely to lose your job because you're not using it. And because we're into this world where AI is an absolute necessary item. It's a skill that you have. That's another kind of subtopic. But I do think that we hear a lot about skill atrophy. So people who are afraid, and I'm also personally afraid sometimes that the more I use AI, the less good I become at the things I use it for. So for me, yeah, using Midjourney to create some graphics, great. I was never good at that to begin with, so it's already maybe slightly better most of the time, not always, mostly better than where I was before. But yeah, for writing, my God, I rely on it a lot, and that's my core skill. And sometimes I'm a bit afraid. Like now I go to an open screen and I just sit there like a NPC and I wonder, how do I start? Uh, Obviously, I have to, work those muscles and figure it out. But atrophy is a real fear.
Definitely, definitely. And I think there's also some studies on that as well, on very heavy AI use and the impact of that from a critical thinking perspective and also a skill atrophy layer. I think in general, and I had this discussion recently with a few of my friends. I think in general, how I try to approach it is to look at AI as my enabler for execution, but not for my thinking. So if I look at, for example, my like product documents, like PRDs, the idea is always mine. I will always come in with the idea, and I will just have one of my AI tools help me put it into the right format, for example, for my team. So I use it heavily for the execution. That's also what it's good at, but not for the full creative aspect of my role. Yeah.
The one thing that I do really love about it, and I feel like doesn't kill the skill atrophy, is actually variations. For a content marketer, variations are honestly so labor intensive, creating different moods, different tones, different goals, that if you have the initial idea and you create the initial like baseline text, yeah, then you can create as many variations as you possibly like, and you're still using the skill and you're still actually having the end selection and end editing, which I feel like is useful. So if I can give any advice to people out there, it's that, yeah, indeed, you should have the initial idea and then, yeah, let the AI do the execution for you, especially if you're working a busy job and you're having to do a million things at once. All right, so I want to go back to this concept of making, thinking, and caring jobs. This was proposed by Robert Reich. He is a University of California, Berkeley professor. Article will be linked in the description. Basically, he has this proposition that all of them, there are three types of jobs. So the making jobs are the jobs where manufacturing, you're creating something. The thinking jobs are like accountants, white collar workers, and the carrying jobs are mostly nurses, hairstylists, people who do things that are physical, caring for a person. That's really the basics of the concept. But he says that basically all of the making jobs will be taken by AI, and thinking jobs as well, very likely, leaving people basically only these generally speaking, low paying caring jobs. I think we have a lot of opinions on these thinking jobs because that's where we fall, right? And I think that this is quite a scary concept when you think. I mean, his proposition ends in a very dystopian future, and I want to really dissuade us from that because I think there is a lot of opportunity in AI. Sana, comments?
I think it's definitely a very dystopian view. I can see where it's coming from. I can see where the thought process is going, but I do really strongly believe that thinking jobs are heavily dependent on critical thought and something being created from scratch also oftentimes. And that's something that AI currently cannot really do. So by having AI replace these thinking jobs or potentially replace these thinking jobs, that would also mean that the quality and the new developments would never improve or would just not be created, which is a scary thought because that would mean we would also not continue developing as society overall. So I do think that, of course, the risk factor is there and I can see where he is coming from. But I do think that there is such a need for also new innovations and new developments for us as society to function, that is not realistic.
And I think also working in AI, specifically in a company that's building AI from scratch, you really see the limitations. We're using all sorts of AI tools, and it really just isn't there yet on so many factors. I think I see on LinkedIn a few people posting like, yeah, I'm going to put my company on holiday because I'm working with 10 AI agents who are all chatting with one another and running the company on its own. Honestly, I don't see a world in which that is actually working right now. I don't see a world where that's working anytime soon. So I don't think people should necessarily fear for their thinking jobs. But I do think for people who are on a more junior level, using AI effectively to do more is such a crazy opportunity. And that in and of itself is undeniable, even for junior people, but also for people who are a bit more senior and a bit more later in their careers, because yeah, it is just such a opportunity.
I think it's an accelerator in itself. It's an enabler. And if you know how to use it right and spend the time to really learn how to work with it, can really move you forward as well. And I think overall, I would say like AI won't take your job, but the person who works with AI effectively will.
Okay, so then that's our kind of closing statement, more or less. I mean, listen, I don't know much about the 69 million jobs that AI will create, but I can almost guarantee you that those jobs will involve AI. So being able to use AI in your on a daily basis is super critical. If you're hiding using AI from your boss, you're probably not doing the right thing. You should be really evangelizing how much you're using AI and how you're using it to do your job even better. And if you're in the category of person who's not using AI in their day-to-day, Zaina, any advice for these people?
Yeah, I think the best advice I can give is find one problem in your day to day and start with that. Look at one thing and try to find a solution for that and work your way up. There are so many solutions there. It's overwhelming to look at. So really narrow it down and find the thing that works for you.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. This will be posted on the Joy Lab. So subscribe, follow, you know the drill. And my glass is empty.
I'm still working on mine.
Okay.
That's it for this week. You know the drill.
Like, subscribe,
and see you next week.
Cheers.